Hi, and thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Hang on, grab onto your chairs because this is going to be a little bit of a rodeo through POTA rules. The reason I'm doing this video is if anybody's brave enough to do a POTA activation on YouTube, there's always somebody who will pop up and point a few things out.
In POTA, there are rules and rules are rules, and this is best where you do the radio in a park from.
So as you all know, hopefully, you're only supposed to activate within the park boundaries. There is an exemption to that, which we'll come on to in a second. Also, you use the official maps and coordinates. You'll know on this on the POTA app, and you go onto the POTA.app website if you've not seen it before and have a look at the maps. But that's quite difficult in places like the Staffordshire Way and the Coventry Canal, for example, in my area, which is blooming bonkers. Let's come on to that later. Small or fragmented parks, where it's the entire park counts as one activation. If you move around within it, it's still one activation. And also remember that the land has to be publicly accessible. A few people question that one, but anyway, let's skip away from that. Let's talk multi-park activations. For example, 2Fers, 3Fers, that's when you're doing 3 parks or 2 parks when you're out on activation. The rules are you must be physically inside each park's boundaries. You cannot claim a park you can see or are near but you're outside of, and you log them separately. And there is the 30-metre rule. So if your operating position is within 30 metres of a park boundary, it still counts as being in the park. So this is really, I think, designed for those people, let's call them mobile hams, who park up in the car with, let's say, a ham stick on the radio. Don't get out of the car, don't walk around the park, but just activate. And to demonstrate this, what we've got here is a little diagram that gives you a bit of an idea. So there's the park, you're supposed to be within those boundaries, but if we use the 30-metre rule and we draw it around the park, it gives us a good idea. And if you want to do this practically, this is an absolutely fantastic resource. So you can see the website address at the bottom. You tick the boxes of what you want to do. So I would tick on the boundaries here, and then you can search where you want to go and do an activation, and then calculate from this where the park boundaries are, which does seem straightforward, but let me give you a practical example. And here's an example, and I will show you some video footage in a second of the park to give you a better sort of context to the whole thing. Now, whatever you do on the map, it doesn't give you a boundary of this nature reserve. This is GB 3140, the Willington Wetlands Nature Reserve. So you've got to make a bit of a call on what is the park boundary and what isn't. Visiting the site, this is what I reckon is the boundary, and that's after talking to the many bird watchers who are there who know it very well and go around the area. So on the far side is a canal. You've got the River Dove joining here and the River Trent, and these are gravel pits that are around, and it's only when you're on site can you see what the physical boundary is. Not that far away is the Cork Park National Trust Estate, and you can see the map gives the clear boundaries on this. Boundaries are rather fascinating, you'll see, because there's an extension of the park further up there, but that's the land that's run by the National Trust that is classed as Cork Abbey. So if you want to activate this park and you want to comply with the POTA rules, this is exactly where you need to sit with inside to do your activation. There is a debate to be had here about National Trust properties, because luckily we are National Trust members. However, if you're not, you're going to say you've got to pay a lot of money to get on here. And is it really public land? Fortunately, there's lots of public footpaths going through here, so you can get here on foot and not have to pay. And the eagle-eyed amongst us will have noticed that the team, that through their own time and resources, let's face it, I'll have to thank them for that, but they've put in the wrong coordinates. So what on here is supposed to be Cork Abbey, and where you activate within is outside. Right, here we are at the gates of the Willington Wetlands Nature Reserve, as I mentioned earlier, and this is the entrance in. Now, what this doesn't show you is how you get here. You get here by walking down this path that, according to my watch, was about 1 kilometre long. So, are you ready for this? We've walked about 1 kilometre, we've got to the entrance, we've got to these signs. Lots of information, lots of good stuff. And just for the matter of interest, if you're a POTA person, all these things are a bit lovely in the context of this. This is a huge RSPB area, and they do lots of things. They're very active, and there were lots of people sitting in the hides here. And there is some car parking. It's not official, but it's way, way, way more than 30 metres. For me, if we just drove up into a car park with a hamstick and, sat on CW or sideband or something, FT8, and did our 10 contacts and drove out again, that's not in the spirit of POTA for me. POTA is getting out in the outdoors and supporting these parks and promoting them as well, all for the public good and our good. So I think a park should be beautiful, it should be worth visiting, like this is. I think it should have somewhere to operate from, and also it should be safe for both you and the public. Thinking about RF, EMF, all that sort of stuff. But you can see this place was absolutely amazing. It's got beavers, it's got otters, it's got marsh harriers, it's got bittern, it's got passing peregrine falcons. And you can see there's some of the information about the beavers. Apparently you've got to turn up at the right time, which we didn't. The people here are lovely, by the way. A lot of keen, enthusiastic, come here every day ornithologists. And they were massively accommodating, but I wouldn't sit in one of these hides calling CQ POTA, because they're more likely to pick you up and chuck you out. So you need somewhere to operate from. If you wonder how we've worked out the boundaries of the POTA, of this park on the air, they're very clear on here, because you've got lots of signs and lots of boundaries, so that's pretty straightforward. Some of these places would be decent to operate from, some of the open hides on decent weather, and probably pretty decent for setting my antenna. Not that many places for doing a long wire, to be fair. If you're going to activate this using the very sensible, in my opinion, long wire, you have to pick your spot around here to find somewhere that is reasonable to get to. By the way, there's a really unusual pylons. There's a out of use now power station not far from here. But anyway, yes, you get the idea, but verticals would be pretty easy from these spots, and there's not too many places to cause you interference in this area. Okay, so if you take your eye over to the left to Carver's Rock, this is a bit of an example about when you're defining parks, just to look out for. So Carver's Rock, yes, is a park, and there's the blob, and there's the little area, but it's part of a much bigger area, which is Foremark Reservoir, which is owned by the National Trust. Lot of land around there, a lot of land. So a bit of a missed opportunity, whoever registered that one, and I will get round to trying to correct it. And we have the yellow blob there for Court Park in the middle of the screen. We've already talked about that. There it also is the boundary, but to the right, look out for you see where it says Scottsbrook. That there is Staunton Harold, which is an old stately home and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of National Trust land, which does adjoin to Cork. So you could theoretically, if this boundary was put correctly on the map, you could do a 2 FOI sitting actually on the boundary of both at the same time, theoretically. So you can see that's an interesting one with a lot of these parks. And so therefore your 2 FA is sitting in 2 parks at the same time, effectively. If you wanted to do both parks and they're separated, for example, Carver's Rock and Cork Park, they're not that far from each other, but what you'd have to do is set up in one, activate, and then pop over to the other and activate. And that way you keep the POTA Police very happy. Here's a photo here of a park very close to me. This is Rosleston Forestry Centre in the Midlands, East Midlands, and it is a POTA site. And Rosleston Forestry Centre sits in the National Forest. Now, the National Forest is 75 miles long, so it's got a lot of parks in it. So you could sit in this park and activate it, and also activate the National Forest. That's a 2 FA, right? And lastly, this is me making a fool of myself, getting a long wire up a tree on a park that's right by where I live. Now, here's the thing. I quite often look to see for spots to see who's activating, and I saw somebody was activating this park. Now, it's not that large. I can get to it within 2 minutes, probably a minute, and guess what? Somebody was activating it, but there was no sign of that person on the park. Not sign anywhere, nowhere about. And there's only one place you could probably squeeze a car in, so they weren't parked there and they weren't physically on the site. So that's a question for you, isn't it? That's a question. Is that, where were they? And the same person I've seen has activated lots and lots of POTA spots, and I always think I'll come across them because I'm out quite often, but I never am, and that's quite possible in it, time of day and all that sort of stuff. So how rigidly, here's a question for you, how rigidly should people stick to the POTA rules? Is it about getting out and about? But it's only a hobby, some people would say, and it really doesn't matter. Nobody cares, but they do care. So if we keep to the spirit of POTA, it does help, doesn't it, really? But at the same time, some people seem to be bending the rules. What am I really saying? I could do with your views. Let me know. Comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Range and beware, we can go as years fall, from mountain together to be the same song.